very special guest that I'm going to bring up here in just a second. Look, you guys know that I brought a lot of people in front of you over the years. I have a tendency to I'm pretty proud of the circle of friends I've been able to create, and even more proud that they think enough of me and enough of you to come in here and share with you their journey and what they've learned over the years, their wisdom, etc. And I'm not, I'm 53 years old. I've been around a long time. I'm not easily impressed at this point in my life. But I will tell you, the guy that's about to come up here, I am one of the most impressive guys I've ever seen, right? How many of you read The Real Deal, or how many of you read the Wall Street Journal? Let me see your hands. Hold them high. Okay. If you're not reading The Real Deal, then you are clearly need to get your shit together, because it has kind of become the industry rag when it comes to real estate. Ari is for one reason or another is constantly featured on major publications around the country as it relates to real estate. And it really boils down to a couple things. One, he's an amazing guy. Very, very inspiring. His journey, his story, which I'm going to have him share with you, is pretty incredible. This guy has accomplished so much in the real estate space, specifically here in Texas, in a very, very, all things considered, very short period of time. He has created significant wealth in a very short period of time. Every one of you, again, another thing I know about all of you is a major component of what we're trying to do here is create legacy, generational wealth. Can I get a hell yeah? All right, this is a guy that, again, I'm looking forward to kind of figuring out how he's done it, but this guy has tapped into a way to make that happen in real time in his world. It is extremely inspiring, and the more I've gotten to spend time with him, he and I have connected on another level where we just have some amazing conversations. The dude's just a good guy, and he's asked constantly to speak all over the country, and he and I were talking about it, and he just doesn't do it. But we happen to be in his backyard, recently called the Oracle of Austin. It's a guy that is completely dialed in on this market and others around the country. And I want you guys to get on your feet and give Mr. Ari Rastegar a big, warm welcome to the boardroom. Let him hear you. Welcome, buddy. Come on in here. I'm going to grab this one. You grab that one. Oh, man. How you doing, brother?
Living the dream.
Yeah, clearly. So I know not everybody is going to be super familiar with your whole story. So I figured let's start there. Let's just go back and break it down for us, man. What's the whole journey, and how did you get to where we are now?
Well, my parents, my dad is an Iranian American, and so my grandpa was the Shah of Iran's medical doctor.
Oh, wow.
And we weren't Muslim, so when the revolution broke out, they killed our whole family. So my dad, uncles, and aunt were studying here at Austin at UT when the revolution broke out, and they just never went back. And my dad, had a little blonde-haired, blue-eyed girlfriend that he was running around with. 9 months later, I popped out. So don't think it was kind of like a tornado meeting a volcano, so it didn't last that long. Yeah, and so my dad's kind of belief was, if we don't have any money, how can he put me in an environment that something might rub off? So he got into SMU Law School in Dallas, which is in Highland Park School District. And anybody even knows Highland Park? It's one of the top, exactly, top school districts in the country. And we lived in student housing. So we literally lived next door to duplex. And my childhood friends in 6th grade, who's my chief of staff, Major Miller, he's back there. And so I was kind of the poorest kid in the richest neighborhood. So I guess all of us that have this kind of insatiable appetite to do something, I find that it has an impetus and some kind of wound. There's got to be a place where you got cut enough that you'd have the desire to actually grow. And for me, it was that massive feeling of insecurity being around all these like wealthy kids and being kind of the poorest kid in the room.
Inspirational and also kind of a shot at the same time.
And I think all things are kind of like that in the way that, yeah, I mean, so there was things that were motivational, inspirational, aspirational, but there was also a lot of racism. There was a lot of just socioeconomic discrimination. And I look back on it as, wildly grateful, but that doesn't mean that it didn't fucking suck when it was happening.
Exactly.
So I knew from a very young age I wanted to be rich. And as those things have happened little by little, I started to realize that what I thought was rich really isn't rich, and there's just levels to this shit, FYI. And so I got a job at Johnny Rockets flipping burgers when I was in high school, and really wasn't that exceptional of a kid. And I actually had a horrific speech impediment. So I went to 7 years of speech therapy between ages like 10 to 17 to overcome a lisp and a stutter. And in hindsight, I've come to believe that, especially right now, probably the fundamental most important skill that you can possibly have is to learn how to communicate. Like, if you can communicate articulately, communicate with passion, especially in a world dominated by electronics and technology and all these things, you're gonna have such a stark competitive advantage that it's not even funny. If you look at the wealthiest families in the world, and I study greatness for a living, by the way. I was an English major in undergrad. I'm an attorney by trade. I basically just read. My wife's there in the back. She'll tell you without hyperbole, I probably read 15 books a week, and I have been for 25 years. So you'll see me walking through the house with a book in my hands. So I study greatness for a living. You come to see that the habits, the traits, the characteristics of that type of top performer, whether in sports, business, athletics, is by 99% exactly the same. The mentality's the same, and like you all talk about mediocrity being the enemy, I've always thought of it as, good is the enemy of great, or good enough is the enemy of great. And if you look at the richest families in the world for the past, 1,000 years, they send their kids to learn liberal arts. They don't send them to get business degrees. They don't send them to go, learn how to form Excel spreadsheets and shit, because they hire people to do that. One of my mentors, when I was in New York, I was feeling, as an English major, I was feeling really uncomfortable about not knowing kind of like the fundamentals of business or accounting principles and things like that when I first got to Wall Street. And so I started taking night classes at NYU to get a business degree, not for credit. And in the morning, I'd stand in front of my mentor's apartment at 6 o'clock in the morning and wait for him to go, just so I could walk from his apartment at 21st and Park Avenue up the road to his office at Cantor Fitzgerald. And I'd wait for him when, 9, 10 o'clock at night outside, just so I could spend, a few minutes with him. Wow. And one time, I guess I yawned in the morning, and anybody that knows me knows I'm not that good of a sleeper. He's like, "You yawned?" Yeah, people fucking yawn. It's like, yeah, people yawn, but you don't yawn. Like, what's going on? I'm like, nothing. I'm a little tired. What are you doing? So he immediately set off this ripple of skepticism. And so I end up telling him that, I want to get a business degree. He says, "Well, you want an MBA?" Like, yeah, yes, I do want an MBA. And he looked at me with this very bizarre, I don't want to say angry, but certainly like a disturbed kind of look, and said, "If you want an MBA, hire one." Hire one. Fuck, okay. So it's like this fundamental paradigm shift between being a leader of some sort, because for any of us that want to expand our businesses, certainly in real estate, I started with a $3,500 loan and fully developed our assets worth $7.5 billion. I own 100% of the company, never took outside capital at the corporate level. Our investors are public pension funds, insurance companies, and a slew of high net worth individuals. And I've come to find that if you actually forget about making sales, and it's something I've never had a marketing or sales department either until a couple months ago. I've started to teach some of these things little by little just internally. But at Rastegar, we don't make sales or believe in making sales. We believe in making friends. And if you can truly digest the profundity of that statement Because every human being has something in common with another human being. Period, hard stop. Your cousin went to Bolivia? I know someone that went to Bolivia. You like food? I like food. You like pizza? And the key is to go through probing questions to find actual, authentic things that you have in common with the people that are supposed to be your clients. Actually. So yes, do you have an intention of making money, this, that, and the other? Of course you do. But if you go into these relationships with the purpose of actually thinking of it as a relationship, because relationships rule the world, and find a common interest and find one little thing that you have in common with that individual, you can begin to grow on that as a cornerstone memory, as a core memory. Say, oh, you like the Astros? I like the Astros. Great. Then you go to an Astros game, and what happens after the Astros game? You have other memories. And you begin to build on those things, because once your clients trust you, there's nothing else. And there's no app, there's no software, there is nothing that is going to take away from real human connection. The book that I'm writing right now is called Old School Works. And I've come to realize that these basic fundamental principles that make us humans, of talking with people, shaking their hand, looking in their eye, standing up when you're on the fucking phone, for God's sake. Stand up, never sit down and take a goddamn call. They can tell, and smile over the phone, they can tell.
Yep.
And actually mean it. Find something to smile about. Look at a picture of your kid. Look at some game you're at. But the key is the authenticity that you bring into the energy of the relationship. And I've raised hundreds of millions of dollars. We have 1 million square feet under construction. We have thousands of acres under production now. And every single deal that we've ever done ended in a human. There was always a human, whether board members, whether brokers, whether bankers, there was always a human being that bleeds exactly like I did. And finding out that in this overly technological world, going back to these core principles of finding that interaction and coming away from this word, this sales word that is transactional. People are so done with transactional bullshit. They don't want it, and if they don't know how to articulate it yet, their own emotional intelligence is repelling it.
Right, their core.
And so for me, it's always been about, looking high and aiming low. Almost like I'm not a golfer, I'm not, the best athlete by any stretch of the imagination. But if you think about standing on a golf course and you're about to tee off, if you can look up and see a few hundred yards down the way, but you aim right at the ball right there in front of you. And I think that is the fundamental difference, because I believe in teeny habits, because the habits at the end of the day run your life. If you're going to focus any time on anything, focus on creating habits, because they become autopilot, they're automated, and you don't have to spend any energy to do them. And the way that you do that is by going profoundly small, not big. That's a big thing for people like us to say, I want to go big and I want to have these big goals, but you got to look big but go small and develop teeny habits. You want to learn how to do 100 push-ups? Do fucking 1 push-up every single day. 1, and make the goal so small and so absurdly ridiculous that not doing it makes you fucking insane. And when you do that, over time, you start to create the most powerful, sexiest commodity in the universe. Momentum. Momentum. When you have momentum and you have inertia, most people want to kick on the coolers. They think, okay, I just made that big sale. Oh, I just did blah, blah, blah. I deserve a beer. You don't deserve shit. What you deserve is to get the fuck back to work. That's what you deserve, because in that moment, smaller behaviors and smaller actions have exponential gains. And as investors, we're looking for asymmetrical risk profiles. We're looking to take the least amount of risk to make the biggest reward. And that also goes with human behavior. So when you have momentum and you kick that sale, that is the exact time that you need to put the pedal to the fucking metal.
Yep.
And it's a different way of looking at it, but as I share it to you, you're like, yeah, Ari, that makes perfect sense. Then why does 90% of the people in this room who are top achievers not do it, including me? And I'm guilty of it also. There has never been a time to create more wealth in this business, and you're reading the headlines, markets are down. Guess what? There has never been, ever, a peak from a down market that wasn't bigger than the one before it. Ever. I've studied financial crashes for a living. Everything that is going down right now is the time when you have to be going harder than you've ever been in your life, because this is the biggest wealth creation opportunity we've seen in 50 years. Is it going to suck? Yeah. But guess what? Anything worth doing sucks temporarily until it doesn't. And this is that moment by investing deeply in relationships, deeply, and that first relationship is the relationship you have with yourself, right? Because I kind of look at it like, if I think of the thoughts in my head as another person, I say, okay, Craig, I'm going to meet you at the gym tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I don't show up. Maybe one time Craig would say, something came up, it's all right. But if I do that for 3-4 days in a row and promise Craig I'm going to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning, I don't show up, what is he going to think? I'm a flaky son of a bitch.
Yep.
I'm a liar, I'm a flake, any negative. And that is the exact thing that you think about yourself when you don't keep the promises to yourself. So I challenge all of you to keep the promises you make to yourself more so than the promises you make to anybody else, so you don't think you are an asshole and have evidence that you are.
Yeah.
Right?
That internal dialogue is everything.
Internal, and you can't stop your thoughts. I'm a huge proponent of transcendental meditation. Been meditating for the better part of a decade, and I could never recommend anything more to anybody in this room. If you want to find a way to, and meditation is a big misnomer that it's about relaxation and being calm. It's not. Meditation is preparation for activity. Meditation is the equivalent of an archer pulling a bow back and then firing it off into the sunset. And the point of that is it allows your thoughts to, that are all over the place, and that inner dialogue that are all over the place to coagulate, to come together. Because when you have all these thoughts and all these dreams and these visions, it's loose, almost like rays of the sun. So you have to take the magnifying glass and hone them in so that they can start creating, start creating fires, if you will. And you have to find constructive ways to do that, especially with all of these stimulus coming from every direction. We have to find a way to sit with ourselves and not controlling our thoughts, not controlling it. Like it's your brain is a thought mechanism. Your reptilian brain, for 100,000 years is trying to stop you from getting eaten by a crocodile. You're not going to stop that, and luckily not. But you can begin to choose the thoughts and choose the subjects that you want to focus on and have a consolidated amount of effort behind them, because if you have too many goals and too many things that you're working at, you're just diluting all your effort. So one of the things I challenge all of you all to do is to consolidate what the goals and the objectives are into 3. Find 3. You can have other goals later, but all the different things that you're working on, if there's something in the business, KPIs you're trying to work on, or you're trying to get more, whatever it is that you know is the most important thing, dilute everything you're doing into 3 main categories and put 100% of your effort in those 3 things. And make them small, make them impactful, and know that they are a brick to raise the wall that you want. They asked Will Smith about building a wall, and I love Will Smith's journey. Those of you who haven't studied him, he's incredible for a variety of different reasons. But they asked him about building a wall. He's like, I never focus on building a wall. I focus on laying one brick perfectly. Mm-hmm. And I think right now more than ever, with all the achievement that's in the room, all the ambition that's in the room, by focusing on small, individual, actionable, measurable tasks. Because if you can't measure it, it doesn't fucking exist. You find those couple little things, no more than 3, preferably less, and go big as hell on going small. And by doing that, things start to look like miracles. I don't know anybody my age that's built what I've built. And I put up records that I don't think anybody's going to break. And I hope all of you think the same thing about yourselves.
Let's talk about that, because I definitely want to go down both paths here, because clearly I know how passionate you are about real estate, but I also know how passionate you are about health and wellness and the mental game and everything. So I want to make sure we touch on both. So walk us down the path of how Bridging the Gap, sitting there in New York, mentor, kind of does the mental shift on you.
Yep.
But you keep going, down your own journey. But eventually it gets you to the place to where you get in the real estate game. So talk to us, how did you get here, brother?
Yeah, so my mentor, there was the head of Credit Suisse, their conduit lending business has done $400 billion in financing. There's nobody that's done more financing than him on planet Earth. His name's Anthony Orso. He's the president of Newmark. Those of you that might know Newmark, the brokerage out of New York. I just knew I needed to be, I didn't know exactly that real estate was going to be where I was going to end up, but in studying the most successful people in the world, I knew that most of the wealth was created there. My grandfather, I wanted to be a medical doctor, by the way, and my grandfather basically said to me that being in America and being in the land of opportunity, that I can't be a doctor, I need to be a businessman.
Wow.
We were driving through downtown Dallas at the time, and he looked out the windows and basically said, you know, you need to buy all these buildings. And I was 7 years old. I mean, I had no idea what the fuck he was talking about. But now we've gone back and pretty much still try to buy them all or build them all. And we're just getting started, by the way, too, just to be clear. So I started working for Anthony and just watching how the finance side of the business worked, because the capital stack is comprised predominantly of debt. So anybody that's doing any type of acquisition, I challenge you all to understand the capital stack on a percent basis. So although the debt is the largest piece of the capital stack, the equity is by far the most important, and we all understand that. So if there's one skill that you can learn above absolutely anything in this room, is how to raise private capital. There is no skill that is more important. Nothing, everything, sales cure all, as the famous Jack Welch once said. But once you learn private capital and understand the capital stack, then you can grow. And that was something that one of my mentors told me very early on. So I started working for a few different private equity groups. One guy that had a little bit of a business down here in Austin, had an office in New York. Some guys that Anthony knew. And my original niche was to help them find debt financing, because my relationship with Anthony and his guys. And as we started to do it, I started to just look at where the money went, and the guys and ladies that knew how to speak to private capital were making the most money. So I spent 2 years working for a shop that doesn't exist anymore in New York, and the principal just fucked me over in a way that was just unfathomable. Like in my first year, I raised 17 million of private capital in like hundreds and 250s and 500s, just from people that I had sort of just met. I used to sit at Il Mulino, a famous Italian restaurant in New York that was frequented by a lot of wealthy people, and I got to know the bartender really well. His name was Elvis. And so tipped him a couple $100 and sat up at the bar, and whenever rich people would come, he would text me and tell me they were at the bar. And so I would just go sit up there for hours and hours and hours and hours. And that tactic started to work. So I found different bars throughout Manhattan and by the way, this tactic still works today. Go find the bartender. They know everybody. People get drunk. They're loose lip. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't smoke. I did go to college, and I've done everything under the sun. I just don't anymore. And as Mark Twain said, you need to save some vices for later on in life. So I'm saving some. But yeah, and so still to this day, stuff I tell my own folks, stuff that I still do myself, frequent the places where the biggest high rollers in the world are, and then coincidentally happen to be there at the bar with the authentic intention to actually build a relationship, and that's the difference. So if you hear that tactic on its face, it can sound like it's kind of used car sales, meaning kind of like nefariously setting up some situation, but in reality, if you judge that relationship and you show up to that relationship with an unbelievable amount of vulnerability and authenticity to create. And by the way, I told many of these people that's exactly what I did. And being wealthy entrepreneurs on their own, they fucking loved it. They're like, holy shit, I love it.
So glad I ran into you.
Yeah, and then sharing with them the tactic ended up being a rapport building where I can't tell you how many of my clients, when they introduced me to this day, is like, this motherfucker paid a bartender to let me go. And then by the end of a couple years of working for this private equity group and raising, anywhere from 18 to 25 million bucks a year of just private capital, no advertising, no ads, no tech, just hand-to-hand combat. And raising capital is hand-to-hand combat. Don't let anybody kid you. I was supposed to get like 20 or 30% of the value that I created in the GP, and they didn't even pay my $3,000 expense bill when they fired me. So
no way.
Yeah, and it was a heartbreaking.
That's robbery right there.
It was, but it was actually the best trade of my life, because I wouldn't have gone and had the desperation to go start my own shop, and I had the relationship with the capital markets, and at the beginning, because I didn't have the operations, I just started talking to money in these very similar analog tactics. And what happens is when you make people money and you build relationships, they tell other people. And I find that medical doctors are probably one of the greatest niches you could possibly speak to for a couple of reasons. One is it's a real service that they really need, like being the smartest people in the world and whatever you want to call it, but the governments or the school system not teaching the smartest people in the world about money feels like there's some kind of agenda there. It doesn't matter, but I love making money for doctors because I know that they're out there doing good work and helping people every day. And even though they're my smallest investors, I think I might love them the most. And you all can focus on those things as well. And so I started asset allocating. I found other great operators in multifamily and storage and office. We've invested in 38 cities, 12 states, 7 asset classes in 2 countries, and exited. We averaged a 16.6 IRR across the board, and that's by selecting great operators. And once we sold out, returned a bunch of money, and started making money, we were able then to start owner operating, and we started with a little 16-unit apartment complex in a very wealthy neighborhood here in Austin, started our own property management company, and took a very almost like a more of a VC approach to private equity, of thinking how could we scale and build a platform and invest in a track record, invest in a platform that was agnostic to specific asset classes, but was just looking for deep value. And that's exactly what we did. And the strategy overall is about job creation. Like I always tell people that we're putting unity back in community. We're looking to marry mathematics with humanity, because this is a people business. Don't let anybody kid you. This is at the highest levels. You are in the people business. People, people, people. The more you understand people, the more you understand corporate culture around job creation, population migration trends, you're going to better be able to have predictive mechanisms in place to create astronomical wealth. But again, it all comes down to people. And I know in this world of artificial intelligence, I believe in human intelligence. Because at the end of the day, real estate is probably the oldest business in the world, has started with people. And I don't see anything in the foreseeable future of it still not continuing to be about people.
I agree with that. So you do your 16, and then how does that, dude, that's your rise from that 16 unit to where you are. Go out and raise capital, and then you start running.
Yeah, we started, yes, I was able to get in front of us. So I'll kind of back up a little bit. I love cold calling. Cold calling is one of my favorite things in the world. I sold cars at a little used car dealership when I was in college in Laredo, Texas. And they didn't give us any leads, they just gave us a phone book. And so what I did is I went back and found the list of all the previous people that had bought cars before, and just made it a practice of just calling. And cold calling, just like anything else, is a skill. Okay? There's certain things that go along with doing it, but I urge everybody to get into some sort of cold calling, because not only is the rush, because when it works, there are few sentiments in this world that feel better than getting a cold call done. And by the way, you're selling yourself, you're having to communicate, you're having to articulate, you have a time crunch. There's so many just embedded skills that work in a cold calling. And I learned that skill while I was selling cars. And so when I first started the shop, I didn't have really know where to get money. So I got a list of independent RIAs, or independent financial advisors. And why that's especially interesting is if you're a financial advisor at Charles Schwab or Fidelity, they have what's called a selling away provision, which means that they actually can't give you money, unless it's a Fidelity or a Schwab product. Mm-hmm. Independent RIAs are different. They have clients that are high net worth or institutions or whatever, and they can basically invest with anybody. So why would I go try to find an individual investor when I can go find the person that's sitting at the helm of billions and billions of dollars? So I raised $50 million on one cold call. And wow. That changed.
Let's just say it again.
50 million, one cold call. Yeah. And that's not the biggest one ever, by the way. That was the first big one. They got me in front of a public pension fund in Louisiana. Think about this group, the District Attorney Retirement Systems for the state of Louisiana. What does that mean? That means the pension fund for every criminal prosecutor in the state of Louisiana. I went and sat in front of, gave him my pitch, and the chairman basically said, he wrote a testimonial in my book. He's one of my best friends now, but he literally just called bullshit. He's like, there's no fucking way. And the board voted, the advisor recommended it, so they gave me $1 million. As I was walking out, he kind of grabbed me by the back of my suit and said, next week, you come back, me and you. And mind you, he was the youngest licensed sheriff in Louisiana history, youngest licensed district attorney in Louisiana history. And he called me back. So I went and told my father, what the fuck do I do? I'm gonna go get cross-examined by most famous criminal prosecutor in Louisiana. And my dad, in his thick Iranian accent, he's like, bring your research. Okay, so I went and printed out about 2,000 pages of data, performas, analysis, market comps, and I put them in 2 big kind of legal binders. I didn't have enough room for clothes in my suitcase. I just brought 1 suit, put in my suitcase, flew to Louisiana, and at 6:30 in the morning, I was just standing in front of the door, and he's like, what the fuck is that? I was like, well, you said it was bullshit. It's not. And so we sat down, I think it's 6:30 or 6:45, something, my wife would remember exactly when. We went through every single page.
Wow.
3:30 in the afternoon, didn't move. And by the end of it, he sat back and kind of did the, arms crossed and did the, I get it. Get it. And they ended up giving me $38 million over the next 3 years, and we've been their top performing investment manager in the firm's, in the fund's 50-year history. And from there, we built relationships with other money managers, other high net worth individuals, and the press started to get word of it, and the press is a very powerful thing. I mean, it's a double-edged sword in a lot of ways, but reporters are people too, man. The press are people too. Yeah. And if you can have a way to really invest your time in getting to meet some of these reporters, whether bloggers, podcasters, and treat them like your clients, because guess what? They fucking are. And if anything, it's an indirect selling mechanism, which I kind of believe it's a direct selling mechanism. But getting to know these people, spending time with them, building relationship with them. Oscar Wilde said something that stuck with me. He said, the key to somebody's heart is an unexpected gift at an unexpected time. Key to somebody's heart, unexpected gift, unexpected time. Learn that. The people that you meet, the people you spend time with, do something special. It's not about money per se. Something that's thoughtful, that's unexpected, that's kind, to make them think about you. Because in this world of little, shitty little koozies and bullshit pens or whatever, $200 at Tiffany's for just a little tea set. $200, someone said they're making $50,000, $75,000 sales, and people in here doing millions of dollars with it. $200?
Well, let me just say this, because this is a great caveat, is that this is not bullshit. So Ari and I, we've had multiple conversations, and then out of the blue, a couple of weeks ago, I'm traveling, and Seema's like, we got this massive box here at the office. You mean to open this? Open it up. And it is a picnic set from Williams Sonova in this beautiful basket. Open it up, and it's fine china inside of there, champagne glasses, all this kind of stuff. And just want to let you know, I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, I did, by the way.
Thinking of you. And looking forward to talking in a couple weeks here. I'm supposed to be giving this motherfucker gifts, right? And it meant, I called you. I was like, dude, it meant the world to me, because that doesn't happen, right, very often. And this is somebody that had no reason, nothing expected. It was just, hey, man, just want to let you know you're on my mind. And it was it just blew me away. I was like, dude, this is so unexpected and meant the world to me. And I will never forget it. So to your point, just something as thoughtful as that goes so far.
And what is the value of that relationship? And again, the key is authenticity. I cannot stress that enough, because I've been watching, as Kent said, No, we get all sorts of random solicitations to do all sorts of talks and things like that. And I love people. I love talking about these things. Anything that I've learned humbly in my life, I'm happy to share. I just don't have the time to do these things very often. But watching your videos, I watch them. I love them, and I find myself going them and seeing them and being inspired myself. So I'm sitting here because I feel like it's a little bit of a karmic debt for me. I saw something, I learned something, I visited, I've shared it with my friends, and being able to, share whatever insights I have over the years. And I find that these are things that are very true in our lives, like karma. And that word has a lot of baggage now. It's used in different ways, but every action has an equal and opposite reaction. It's physics. Like, I don't look at karma as religionist or some kind of spiritual term. It's actually just physics, it's math, it's science. And that goes the same way. So when you have a reason that somebody has touched you, and I always joke, I love anybody that puts their money where my mouth is. But if you find the people that you're bonding with, that might have clients that are referring to you, complimented you authentically, you need to find a way to reciprocate that in a very powerful way. Find a way through gifts, through notes, and not a fucking email. Send them something solid, because what happens is when you send them something solid in the mail, first of all, nobody's doing it, so there's a major outlier, but it's something they can hold, something they can look at, and what that does is it creates this subconscious level of security that you're solid, that you can be trusted, that you're real, that you're tangible. And as long as you continue to show up and do what you're going to do, the success that you'll receive from using some of these tactics are going to be so fucking enormous that it's going to seem like magic, but it's not. It's actually the realest thing ever. It's actually the opposite of magic. It's compounded growth through relationships, through actions, and most importantly through the power of vulnerability and authenticity.
I love that. So you're out there raising money, and this thing starts to take off. You've officially been, quote unquote, like for the operator in the real estate game for how long now?
I started the firm with $3,500 8 years ago.
Okay, and so as of today, it's so impressive. So right now, you've raised hundreds of millions of dollars, built millions. So talk to me about what the world looks like today, because I know it's
value?
Huge. Yeah,
billions.
Right. Billions in commercial, multifamily, ground-up development, build-to-rent.
All of it. So right at this exact moment, I have 1 million square feet under construction at the moment, delivering in the next 4 to 5 months, 600,000 square feet of industrial. We've begun to pre-lease next to Tesla's Gigafactory, boutique office building that I designed in downtown. It's the first post-COVID office building ever designed and built, designed during COVID, built after COVID. It has special HEPA filters, balconies, staircases. That's in downtown. A condo building on South First. 318 acres in Kyle, Texas, which is the fastest growing city in the United States of America in 2021, to build a master plan community with a concept I call futuristic suburbanism. And that phrase just is such a fucking annoying mouthful, so forgive me. I thought I was being smart when I said it, and I realized it makes me sound even stupider. Effectively, we believe that dining rooms are fake fucking rooms. Dining room is a ego-driven room that, how many people here actually use their dining room consistently? 1 out of 250, exactly. The reason for that is the cost per foot that's being pawned off to the end user is an egregious number. So what we do know based on just sociological behavior is we aggregate around the kitchen. So what we've done is we've brought alley-loaded houses back that face in parks that force a community interaction, and making the kitchen 20% bigger, we can almost cut the overall cost per foot by 25%, which means that our margin can still stay static, but the end user pricing at the end is 20% less.
That makes sense.
So allowing more of, it's almost looking like affordable housing, but it's not.
Right.
And And so we took a farm that you could build like a little barn on and went through one of the largest up zones, which is really our expertise as a firm, is zoning and entitlement. Zoning and entitlements is what I feel like we do better than anybody on the planet. And it has to do with listening to community, understanding where things are, where the puck is going, as Gretzky says. Like, we skate where the puck is going, not where it is. Has to do with precedent, has a lot to do with law, has a lot of just political rhetoric of just understanding how to appease people that just want to keep their jobs more than anything. And we have another 890 acres, about 5 minutes outside of that, where we're going to start building industrial plants, biodegradable, glove manufacturing, and creating the jobs, and then building the housing next to it. So building actual full circle master plan communities that have the job creation mechanism through the industrial, and then have the housing, build for rent housing, lot sale development, multifamily, and commercial, and quite simply building actual community.
A real community.
We donated, I don't even know how much it was. What was it, 5 acres to the school? How many? 11. So we donated 11 acres to the city of Kyle to build the new elementary school on our property. And when I told the mayor we were going to donate the land, like, he was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man. Like, he was beside himself. He's like, look, we have all this growth coming, but the city can't afford enough money to pay for a school. And so on its face, it looks like I'm kind of being a philanthropist, but if you're just moving to Texas and you can walk your kids to school, if you look at the history of property values across from elementary school, not middle schools and high schools, for the obvious reasons. The property values have been the most stable, and the crime rates have been the most low of any other demographic of housing communities in the United States. And so by building the new school there and bringing, local public pension funds, firefighters, first responders, police officers, and smaller boutique funds to be a part of deals that basically only rich people get to be a part of realistically, and the people that actually need to get money don't really have access to these. So we've created these sidecars where we'll bring an anchor institutional investor. We're usually the biggest investors in every deal we do, and that's kind of been the way that we've stayed disciplined, where it's not just kind of like a use other people's money and get over your skis. Like, can we truly have a true alignment of interests? And I tell people all the time, like, we're not in the fee business, we're in the fucking performance business. I'm not rewarded for capital raising by design, but if I make money, fucking pay me a lot more than you'll pay other institutional investors, because I'm offsetting money on the risk. So you see 80-20 splits, right? You see an 80-20 over an 8% preferred return as a hurdle. We get 50-50 over a 7. So you don't have to do nearly as many deals. So if you knock the cover off the ball, you're making a bunch of money. If you don't, you're fucked. And so I've always, wanted to, de-risk for my clients on the front end and just say, look, we're not going to try to nickel and dime you disposition fee, acquisition fee, origination fee. First of all, it doesn't even pay my dry cleaning. But when it actually does work, our interests are truly aligned. You weren't feed on the front. We made a bunch of money together.
Yeah.
And that, back to that whole, human intelligence, human interaction, that is what we do. Like, everything that we do about this business, because real estate, what makes it real to me, is that people inhabit it. And the more that you can get deep into that psychology and the needs that people have, the human behavior that they have, the more that your businesses will scale exponentially.
So let's switch gears, because I also know, like I said earlier, I know exactly how passionate you are. Literally on the cover of Wall Street Journal last week about biohacking and health and taking care of yourself and all of, so let's kind of, how'd you get into that area of your life? Because I know it's very important to you.
Yeah, I don't really have any hobbies per se, other than health and wellness. And cliches are cliches for a reason, right? Like, health is wealth, and everything that we all want to do in this room requires one finite commodity.
You.
Energy. And energy and you, exactly. You are all you have, by the way. Sorry to break it to everybody, but you are all you got. And the other relationships that you have and the other roles that you play are all starkly secondary, if not tertiary, from everything else. So it's just you. And I realized I was getting tired. My mom and dad were vegetarians. when I was growing up at a time when being vegetarian wasn't cool. My mom practiced homeopathy, which is kind of like a naturopathic kind of thing. Always took vitamins. Always were kind of health conscious growing up. So it was in my life to some degree. And I realized about 10 years ago that I just didn't feel good. I weighed 128 pounds. I'm 5'8". I weigh 158 today. So I was 30 pounds underweight. And I met somebody. His name is Dr. Jacob Rosenstein. Not only one of my favorite people in the entire world by leaps and bounds, but probably one of the smartest people, if not the smartest person I've ever met, certainly scientifically. He asked me, and he's also a personal investor, he asked me about these dark circles that were under my eyes. I actually wrote the foreword to his book, which is called Defy Aging. And he's like, how do you feel? I feel like shit, pretty much, but I'm too fucking stubborn to stop. And he called me into his office. He's a spinal neurosurgeon, but just because he's just a beautiful angel of a man, he started this company called Southwest Age Management out of Arlington, where for very inexpensive, for respect to what it is, he takes a battery of tests, 3D carotid artery scans, DEXA scans for bone density, food sensitivity tests, every hormone, blood, anything you can imagine. And based upon those, he creates custom pharmaceutical grade vitamins in a compounding pharmacy specifically for you. So it's the equivalent of getting a custom suit over buying something off the rack, or, I take vitamins. Well, what the fuck does that mean? I'm eating healthy. For what?
Yeah.
When my wife did her food sensitivity test, she was allergic to lettuce and broccoli. Anybody in here would have thought that eating lettuce and broccoli would put you into an inflammatory state? I was allergic to sardines, which is, if you're not allergic to it, is probably the healthiest food in the world because of the 369 omega balances and the protein and the things together, whatever. And people say you are what you eat. It's complete bullshit. You are what you eat eats. And so, sardines as an example are vegetarian fish. They're small, no mercury. And talking with Rosenstein, he went through all my stuff, and he was like, dude, your testosterone is like 140, which is probably the testosterone of the average 80-year-old. My estrogen was super high. I was like growing man boobs. My gut's all inflamed and just felt like shit. And he started prescribing me these vitamins, got me on hormone replacement. And if I show you the before and after pictures of 90 days, it's completely unfathomable. And I started to feel better. And when I started to feel better, the anxieties and the depressive tendencies, and any entrepreneur here, if they don't admit that they have those feelings, they're not trying hard enough. Because if there's not a time, at least once or twice a week, that you feel like you should jump off the side of the building, then for me now, it's pretty much every other day. But those feelings started to change where I stood on the top of the building thinking about jumping off. The difference was this time I thought I could fucking fly. And I wasn't wrong, obviously. And so by focusing on those things and finding ways to optimize my own physique, and the big takeaway here is this is not an exercise in vanity. This is actually the biggest sacrifice I could make to putting the people ahead of me, because I like to look at my business as making our clients the heroes and us being the guides. Like I don't want to be the hero of their story. I want to be the guide to help them achieve whatever the dreams that they have. And to be a great guide, whether you look at Mickey or look at Mr. Miyagi or look at any of these other guides and the great stories that we've ever seen, they've been there, they've done that. And you want to create a world for your clients that they're achieving all the dreams that they want. And the only way to do that is to have authority, to have real authority. And nothing speaks more volumes than energy. You walk into a room, you don't got to say a goddamn thing because that aura is glowing. You don't have to tell somebody you're healthy because your skin's glowing so bright you need new sunglasses. And so that has been the competitive advantage for me, if I have to say above anything, is reading, learning how to articulate, talking, bonding with human beings, and focusing at a level of obsession on my health to a place more than I manage my blood work the way I manage my financial statements, sometimes more aggressively. And what I found is there's more punch in the hours that I put in. I actually have the energy to be able to sleep, although that sounds contradictory, it's not. And those things together, I started to realize that I am my most important asset. I'm my only asset.
No doubt, brother.
I don't have anything else. Like everything else is a fucking liability. And to me, a liability is something that costs money, by the way. If I pay money towards it, it's a liability. So all of you homeowners out there that think you have an asset, you're wrong. It's a fucking liability that you might get lucky and make money on. But I wanted to make sure that the things that I was gonna help me produce, i.e. me, to be a father, to be a husband, to be a business owner, to be a friend, to be, a manager of capital, I needed to put those right tools in and make the foundation strong. And the analogy through real estate development just fits so seamlessly and beautifully into the way that you actually build yourself into an empire.
Love that, brother. What are a couple of the things like, do you do the infrared sauna? Yeah, I do cold plunge. You do anything, just share a couple things that may seem a little off the wall to people.
Infrared light, super powerful, but taken with a grain of salt. Doing it too much is not. Hyperbaric chambers. So hyperbaric chambers, I'm sure we've heard those thrown around. There are few things that are more profound to overall health and wellness than hyperbaric chambers.
Really?
Yeah, and the science is so overwhelming. There's a book called The Oxygen Revolution that you can buy on Amazon. It's like $10. And by going in the hyperbaric chambers, and they have ones that are made out of almost like a plastic kind of material, they have zero efficacy, 0.0. Either it has to be hard metal or made out of some sort of like plexiglass. And what happens is you go in there and they increase the atmospheric pressure anywhere from 1.5, 2 to 3 times the existing atmosphere. And they pump pharmaceutical grade oxygen into it. What happens is it increases your stem cell production by 800%. So literally everything that needs to be regrown in your body is accelerated by 800%.
Right.
And the thing about it is it has to have materials to be able to rebuild you, so to speak. So that's where the proper, diet, nutrition, and vitamins and things go in. But it's not cheap. Every session is somewhere around $125. But if you do 40 sessions within a close proximity as one inflection point, you have permanent change to your brain. Like new capillaries being built, new neural pathways being built.
How long are you in there?
Well, to pressurize and depressurize, it's called an hour and 15 minutes.
Got it.
Hour and 15 minutes. And so anything that you're doing, nothing flushes lactic acid out of your body more than hyperbaric chambers. Absolutely nothing. It's number one across the board. It's been
very interesting.
Been critical. The proper vitamins, probiotics, prebiotics, and a lot of people hear about probiotics, like that's a thing that I think has been like a buzzword around. But the thing about probiotics, which is the natural bacteria, your flora and your fauna for your gut, and don't let anybody kid you, 95% of serotonin and dopamine is used in your gut, not in your brain. So this is your brain. Your guts, I have a gut feeling, it's because you have more neural synapses in your gut than you do in your brain. Your gut is your brain. So by not focusing on these things, you're neglecting your brain at a level that you don't even want to know how bad it is. And so posture management, which is another big one. There's a practice called egoscue. Maybe some people have heard about it here or there, but our posture is like, effectively trying to drag race a car and not getting the tires aligned. It just sounds ridiculous. I'm living a drag race of a life as an entrepreneur. Don't I want to make sure my shoulders are in the right place, my lungs aren't being collapsed, my heart isn't getting overly stressed, my hips don't have disparity to it, and not to mention good posture equates to confidence. When you are working on your posture and you're walking with a place where your ear is centered over your shoulder, down your hip, down to your elbow, and you walk in, you can say a lot less. I like to track my word count. Anything that you say can and will be used against you. So the less that I can speak and the more profound those few words are, the less liability that you actually hold around. And 80% of communication is nonverbal. So by focusing on your posture, focusing on your internal health, which then calculates over into your emotional health, because so much of what we call anxiety and depression is not a psychological problem, it's a physiological problem. And once you start to correct the dopamine and the serotonin levels by probiotics and prebiotics in your gut, having high nutrition foods, a lot of those issues naturally just dissipate.
I totally agree with that. I mean, we've had, I'm sure you're familiar with Gary Brecka. He was here, I don't know, a year ago. This is a huge component of not only, what's the point of creating the wealth? What's the point of creating the success if you do it, if you're along the way, you're not here to enjoy it, or more importantly, you're not here to enjoy the benefits of it with your family, with your friends, and all that kind of good stuff. I mean, I would talk a lot about becoming the best version of yourself, not only professionally, but personally.
Yeah, and I believe, and again, like handicapping this with what could seem like ego or vanity is focusing on you. I mean, focusing on doing not what other people are necessarily trying to do. Focus on what your behavior is going to be. Focus on those core things that you can actually. There's so many things in this business that are just completely uncontrollable, economic, interest rates, and just whatever. But if you can focus on the things that you can actually control, the uncontrollable starts to become more manageable. I'm not going to control it, and that's fine. But it needs to be manageable, and the more energy you have, the more vitality you have. It's just a natural iteration. I mean, it's just a very, the problem with common sense is just not so common anymore, right? But these commonsensical ways of bonding with your fellow human being, taking care of your own ecosystem, and doing it with a profound level of dedication will make everything better.
I think the last thing you just said is the most important. The dedication, the intentionality, the measuring, one thing to talk about it, and one thing to kind of tip your toe in. It's a whole nother level, the level you're playing at, right? And that most...
I'm dealing with absolute, complete obsession.
Right.
So let's be very, very clear. I live and breathe I don't do days off. I don't do vacations. My kids go on vacation and they invite me to come with them sometimes. This is not what I do. This is who I am. And as Will talks about, they asked him one time about becoming the highest paid actor in the world. At the time, as an African-American man, what Will did is, being a Grammy award-winning singer, rapper, best, highest rated television show, Men in Black. The guy is so unbelievably impressive for a variety of reasons. But they asked him, how did you become the highest paid actor in the world? He said, well, I'm not really the best actor. I'm not really the best looking. But I'll tell you what. If you and me get on a treadmill side by side, either you're getting off first or I'm going to fucking die. And that's my life strategy. You're getting off first or I'm going to fucking die. And if you don't invest with us, it's not your loss. You're fucking insane. And you have to live with that, not me. After you invest with us, we have one statement: congratulations and you're welcome. And if you truly believe that with all your heart, as I do, sales happen, growth happens, and compound interest. They asked Einstein, what are the two most powerful forces in the universe? He said gravity and compound interest. Same goes for your own time, the compounded interest that you spend on your own habits, on your own behaviors, the compounded interest of your actual financial investments. But it starts to hit a J curve. If you watch a dollar, if you were to bet $1 on every hole in 18 holes of golf and you double it every hole, I'm sure some of you have seen this before, nothing really happens until hole 13. Then all of a sudden, hole 13 to 18, it goes from $600 to $14 million in that final last stretch. And it's not very crowded there in the last mile, to be perfectly clear. At the beginning, where you feel like you're competing with all these people and there's so much to work with, by keeping your head down and keep working at it, you come to see when you get to the next level, nobody's there. It's just fucking taking candy from a baby.
I love that, brother. We're going to end it there, man. I could do this all day, and I know that You and I are going to spend some time in the near future
forward
up
to
in
it.
Dallas. Tell everybody real quick how to get your book.
My book is called The Gift of Failure. You can buy it on Amazon. I did the audio recording myself, 18 hours in a fucking booth, dumbest thing I ever did. But the book is really around health, wealth, and happiness, and go through some of the tactics that I've picked up over the years. The first line of the book is, "I hope you fail. I hope you fail a lot," and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I mean, for whatever modicum of success I may not have had, there's a laundry list of epic, soul-crushing failures that are behind it, and I literally took a spoon and scraped out my heart and wrote it on those pages. One of the hardest things I've ever done is actually admitting all the things that I fucked up along the way, but there was something like cathartic and like healing about doing it. So if you want to read everything I ever fucked up in my life, get The Gift of Failure.
Let him hear you, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, thank you so much.
It was amazing. You got it.
That's for you.